So here's the deal. There's this guy who gets totally betrayed and ends up dying because of his love. But lucky for him, he gets reincarnated 10 years earlier. Now he's out for revenge and wants to become the strongest. Along the way, he meets a bunch of beautiful girls who fall for him. So how's all of this gonna play out? Let's dive into the video and find out. The ground shook with massive explosions as ice and fire magic clashed. Right in front of our hero was this colossal dragon, the dungeon's toughest boss. Even though he was just a mage, he knew he was way too weak to take on this beast solo. His strongest attacks couldn't even scratch its scales. Fear hit him hard as the dragon's claw sent him flying and he lost his staff. Damn it, I was supposed to be the greatest mage in the world and now I might die here, he thought as he crashed to the ground, every bone aching. Suddenly, he heard footsteps. Looking up, he saw his teammates, Ji and Zihui. Ji was his girl, and Zihui was his best friend. But when he saw Zihui's arm around Jia's waist, he was stunned. He pushed his feelings aside and quickly begged for their help, but they just stood there, cold and indifferent. Jai walked over and gently took the storage ring from his finger, casually saying she never expected him to actually go after the Pisces amulet. Her words cut deep, talking about how he was always so kind and gave her everything she wanted. Before he could say anything, she yanked the ring off. Confused and hurt, he tried to make sense of what she was saying. Why would she do this? He reached out to stop her, but his world shattered when Jia and Zihui started kissing right in front of him. The betrayal was too much. This was all planned just to get rid of me, he thought. They came to send him off. He couldn't believe his eyes. He had treated them like family, and they betrayed him. His life was slipping away, his heartbeat fading. Everything went blank. He thought he was dead, but suddenly his chest began to glow red, and the Pisces amulet slowly emerged. Bang, bang, bang. Wake up, the sun's already up. His annoying alarm clock blared. Instinctively, he slapped it off, rubbed his head, and opened his eyes. The room looked unfamiliar yet oddly familiar, like his college dorm. Wasn't he just killed by the final boss? Quickly realizing his storage ring and all his elixirs and treasures were gone, he saw the TV show. It was August 7th, 2040. Had he been reincarnated to the day before the game launched 10 years ago? Was this real? Lin calmed down and tried to figure out how he had been reincarnated, recalling a rumor from the game, The 8 Wastelands, which said the ultimate artifact, the Pisces amulet, could grant a chance of revival. He concluded it must have been the Pisces amulet that brought him back to life, but his joy at being reincarnated quickly turned to anger. Luckily, he hadn't put the Pisces amulet in his storage ring, or those two scumbags would have stolen it. With his second chance, he wasn't going to waste it. Throwing on his clothes, Lin walked over to the mirror. His reflection had this icy look. Before all this, he'd been through the absolute worst time of his life. The person he'd loved for 10 years was cheating on him with his best friend. They even plotted to rob him of all his stuff, elixirs, and magical artifacts, eventually trapping him in a death trap. But now, with this second chance, Lin was determined to make them feel the sting of betrayal and complete despair. Suddenly, his phone rang. The caller ID showed Crazy Girl. Lin couldn't help but smile as he answered, "Crazy Girl, long time no see." On the other end, a lively and youthful voice answered, sounding a bit confused. She reminded him that they'd just had hot pot together yesterday, but she seemed nervous making the call. She said there was something important she had to tell him and that he needed to brace himself. Lin knew exactly what she was about to say. On this same day, 10 years ago in his previous life, she called to tell him she saw Ji kissing another guy. Not only did he not believe her, but they got into a huge argument and never spoke again. Hearing her voice again was a relief. He apologized to her. She remarked that he was acting strange today and he laughed it off casually. Then he heard a heavy thud on the floor, probably a dumbbell. She sounded worried and insisted she wasn't joking. Just like before, she told him about Ji and the other guy. Lin's reaction was calm, which made her even more anxious. She kept insisting it wasn't a joke. He interrupted her, saying he believed her but had something more important to share. Hearing his calm voice, she thought he might be on the brink of some dark thoughts and tried to comfort him. However, he sat down in front of his computer and asked, "Hey, you heard about that game? 8 Wastelands?" She replied, "Of course, the ads are everywhere." Lin told her he planned to go full-time in that game. He knew that right now people didn't realize 8 Wastelands wasn't just a regular virtual game. It was about to blow up and, in 5 years, would merge with the real world. No one knew exactly why, but it was a fact that the abilities, artifacts, NPCs, and maps from the game would start showing up in reality. The sooner you get into the game, the better your chances of gaining an edge. On the other end, she sounded surprised but intrigued. She knew the game was being developed by the most advanced cosmic-level AI. Remembering Lin's success in other games, she believed he could do great in 8 Wastelands too. Lin decided to move out of the dorm and rent a place so he could dive deep into the game. She was happy to hear he wasn't feeling down and had found a new direction in life. Relieved, they chatted a bit more, but then Lin suddenly remembered something and quickly asked her not to hang up. He had spent all his money on Ji over the past few years and needed cash to buy equipment for the game. He had no choice but to ask her for a loan. She got mad, scolding him for spending so much on a pricey birthday gift for Jai just yesterday, then hung up in a huff. The more Lin thought about it, the more frustrated he got. Why couldn't he have been reincarnated a day earlier? Suddenly, his phone buzzed again. It was a transfer notification and a voice message from her. She had sent him 10,000 yen, saying it was her gym membership fee for several years. She warned him that if she couldn't go to the gym, she'd use him as her punching bag. He laughed and promised to pay her back. A few hours later, it was almost midnight. Lin lay on his bed making final preparations. Then, the ring on his finger emitted a dazzling red light, and after a quick scan, bound him to it. Soon, a window popped up saying the global beta test of 8 wastelands had begun. Lin found himself immersed in the virtual world once again. 10 years later, he was back where the dream started. A palace appeared before his eyes. A beautiful woman, glowing with golden light, floated gracefully in the air. Everyone's eyes were glued to her, unable to look away. They didn't know, but Lin did. So there was this goddess who was also like the cosmic level AI for the game. It was the first stage and it seemed pretty chill, but you had to play it smart. Some players were whistling and making dumb comments, catcalling her and asking her to come down. Lin just rolled his eyes at their nonsense. Suddenly, those disrespectful players got hit with a swift punishment and were tossed into a vortex. Everyone else was totally clueless about what just happened, but Lin knew that anyone who disrespected the goddess faced penalties, like being temporarily locked up or having their stats permanently dropped. Lin figured he'd be better off being respectful, so he stepped up and gave a nod of respect. The goddess looked at him all calm and approving and said, "Mortal, you seem decent. Do you really want to start down the path of cultivation?" Without missing a beat, he asked her to grant him a talent. In the blink of an eye, her fingertip pointed at him, and a golden light surrounded Lin. Lin couldn't help but think back to the useless talent he got in his last life, which just knocked 10% off item prices, a total waste. He was hoping he wouldn't get the same lame perk this time, but he knew that having a great talent wasn't everything. Even if you start off rough, you can turn things around with the right knowledge. Just then, a beam of light appeared behind him. So, a window popped up right in front of Lin, showing innate talent acquired defy fate. He was totally blown away. This talent was way different from his last life. It had 3 main perks. First, every time he died, all his stats would drop by 10%. Second, every time he leveled up to a new realm, his attribute rewards would be doubled. And third, every breakthrough would attract a big old tribulation, and failing to beat it meant his soul would get wrecked. Lin was stoked. This talent was seriously next level. Sure, it came with some risks, but with great opportunities come great risks, right? If he didn't have the guts to face them, then his new life would be for nothing. The goddess told him, "The talent's yours now, but you need to pick your look." A window popped up with different hairstyles, kind of like character creation in other games. These basic looks had different attributes too. Lin quickly scanned through them and picked the one with the highest charisma. He figured he'd learn from his past life. Choosing an unattractive look just to mess around wasn't the move. Having high charisma made it way easier to win over NPCs, which meant quests would be smoother and building rapport would be a breeze. Next, the goddess asked him to choose his birthplace. A scroll rolled out, showing a map split into 4 regions, each suited for different professions in 8 wastelands: mage, healer, sword cultivator, and body cultivator. Lin took a sec to think, then checked his stats. Sword and body cultivators had their limits set by innate talent, while mages and healers were set by spirit. But the big one, perception, was key for learning rare and powerful skills, followed by charisma. Thankfully, all of Lin's base stats were maxed out. Feeling pumped, he decided if he went mage again, he'd be the best in the game. But mages had their downsides, like being super weak in solo fights. He'd picked mage before for G, but this time it was all about him. Lin chose Mushan as his birthplace, a place famous for sword cultivators. "This time I'm carving my own path," he resolved. As golden light surrounded him, his body started to fade, and the next thing he knew, he was in the newbie village of Musian province. The place was buzzing with new players. Some were holding up signs asking for help, others were already on the hunt for girlfriends, and a bunch were just wowed by how real everything felt. The crowd was as lively as he remembered. Soon an old man showed up, and everyone rushed over to him, clearly the quest giver. Some players had gone all out with their looks, like rocking Superior helmets, tomato heads, or even pumpkin heads. Lin knew those guys would be kicking themselves soon enough. Not my problem for now, he thought, watching them. Instead of following the crowd, he decided to go his own way and headed in the opposite direction. It didn't take long for people to notice that the NPCs weren't responding or handing out quests. A woman's voice called out from behind, asking him to wait. He turned around to see a lady who introduced herself as Lady Niang, the owner of the village's tailor shop. She asked if he was interested in taking on a quest. Everyone around was stunned, mouths hanging open. An NPC was actually coming up to him. Some players even thought he was an NPC himself because he was just that good looking. Lady Niang moved closer, mentioning her husband had passed away 5 years ago, and she'd been solo ever since. She offered to help him out if the quest was too tough. Was this the magic of having maxed out charisma? It seemed like he could attract NPCs without even trying. He could have built a relationship with this attractive widow, but that thought quickly faded. Despite her eagerness, Lin politely declined, saying he had important stuff to do that day, but would definitely come back for a quest another time. She looked a bit bummed, but didn't push it. The other players, though, were even more envious now. Lin needed to find a specific spot in the newbie village, and soon found a blacksmith shop. As he approached, a player told him the blacksmith inside didn't say a word. Lin gave him a thumbs up and said he was just checking things out. Inside, a burly guy was hammering away at some weapon, and seeing Seeing no reaction from him, other players gave up and left. The blacksmith muttered, "Why isn't this weapon coming together today?" Lin stepped up, glanced at the furnace, and without saying a word, grabbed the bellows and started pumping. The flames roared to life and the temperature shot up. Lin knew this blacksmith was the key NPC in the newbie village. The blacksmith commented that the fire was too weak, but Lin kept at it, working the bellows while the blacksmith hammered away. Eventually, the blacksmith proudly held up the completed weapon. "Finally, it's done," he said. He turned to thank Lin, explaining that his apprentice was away, and there was no one to help him keep the fire going. He then pointed to the weapons behind him. "Pick one of these. You can borrow it for a day, but you gotta return it afterward." While some new players might have thought this reward was kinda meh, Lin knew the real perks were coming. He chose a plain iron sword. The blacksmith laughed and said if Lin could bring him 10 pairs of venomous fangs from the bamboo snake within a day, he'd get a special opportunity. After accepting the quest, Lin left the shop. Seeing the weapon in his hand, other players were pretty surprised. A bunch asked how he got it. Lin pointed to the shop and joked, "The blacksmith's heartbroken. Just sing him a song and you'll get a weapon too." Lots of folks bought into his joke and rushed inside, starting to serenade the blacksmith with love songs. Lin just shook his head and laughed, then went about his day. Meanwhile, the blacksmith was shaking his head and muttering, "Get the heck out of here!" But most players figured it was all part of the storyline. Suddenly, the blacksmith swung his hammer and kicked everyone out. By then, Lin had made his way to the bamboo forest. If you looked closely, you'd spot green snakes coiled around the bamboo branches. One of them lunged at him, but Lin just casually took it out with a quick combo, easily dealing with the first snake and scoring 3 experience points. He kept going, taking down a bunch more snakes and picking up various items along the way. Surprisingly, even though the drop rate for gear in 8 Wastelands was usually pretty low, these low-level snakes were dropping a decent amount of gear. Could be his maxed out luck attribute at work. Either way, Lin kept at it. After clearing out all the snakes he could see, he found a stone tablet that read, "Beware of the snake forest." Wiping sweat off his forehead, he checked his loot. He had 10 pairs of venomous fangs, over 100 poison arrows, and some copper coins. Feeling pretty stoked, Lin headed back to the newbie village to turn in the quest. He handed the 10 pairs of fangs to the blacksmith, who inspected them and nodded in approval. "Thanks," the blacksmith said, then handed Lin a letter. "This is the opportunity I promised." Holding the letter with the word sword on it, Lin knew it was his ticket to joining the sword sect. He asked the blacksmith if anyone else had gotten the quest for the letter. The blacksmith said so far, he was the only one. Lin realized he was way ahead of the game. While everyone else was still exploring, he was ready to head to the sword sect. But first, he had one more thing to do. He went to the busy market of the newbie village and started selling some equipment. "Come check it out. I'm selling at a huge loss. Want to get stronger? Need equipment? The first blue snake bow on the server is up for auction. The highest bidder wins. Buy it so I can get married IRL soon." A crowd quickly gathered around Lin, and the bidding shot up to 1,800. Then a girl's voice rang out, 50,000. Everyone turned to see a group of female players coming over. Ignoring the crowd, the woman walked up to Lin and said she could pay in cash or through an online transfer. Smiling, Lin considered her offer. But just then, someone else bid $60,000. A guy introduced himself as Wang Jinghao, the leader of the Millennium Guild. He'd noticed Lin and his early equipment and wanted to recruit him, thinking he was a big shot. Other players recognized the Millennium Guild too. Lin greeted him politely, but he remembered that in his previous life, when he hit the top 10 on the Sky leaderboard, Wang Jinghao had tried to recruit him. He'd refused, and Wang Jinghao had held a grudge ever since. Taking Lin's marriage ad seriously, Wang Jinghao even offered to cover all the wedding costs. Politely, Lin turned him down, thinking he should have come up with a better excuse. He said he admired Lin, and just as he was about to grab the bow and arrows from Lin's hands, the girl threw down a bid of 70,000. Neither of them was backing down, and before long, the price shot up to 300,000. Lin was curious about which guild this girl was from since she didn't seem to care about Wang Jinghao at all. He figured he might be able to use this to really put the squeeze on Wang Jinghao. The girl then upped her bid to 500,000. Wang Jinghao, feeling the heat, tried to assert himself with a bit of a threatening tone. The crowd went wild. Spending 500,000 on low-level gear was nuts. Some folks started speculating that the girl might have some serious backing. Unfazed, the girl said the highest bidder should win and asked if Wang Jinghao thought he could just get everything he wanted. She clearly looked down on him, knowing that her family was way more powerful than the Millennium Guild. Feeling humiliated, Wang Jinghao decided to back off. He wasn't about to drop 500,000 on a newbie weapon, especially with such a crazy woman pushing back. Just as he was about to leave, Lin called out, "Hey brother Wang, wait up!" Wang Jinghao turned around, still fuming, and asked what else Lin wanted. Lin, trying to sound sincere, told him that the Millennium Guild had a big name. If Wang Jinghao was ready to drop 500,000 right then and there, he'd sell the bow to him. In return, Lin wanted Wang Jinghao to keep an eye on him in the future. Wang Jinghao's face lit up at this and he agreed on the spot. His attitude towards Lin shifted, and he laughed, promising to help him out if he ever ran into trouble. He immediately started setting up the money transfer. After getting the cash, Lin handed over the bow, thinking that making a good impression now would make it easier to get what he wanted from Wang Jinghao later. Wang Jinghao, in a much better mood, laughed heartily as he left and threw a sarcastic remark at the girl, telling her to remember not to mess with the Millennium Guild in the future. The girl looked surprised, then totally ticked off. Lin chuckled to himself, thinking, 500,000 for this piece of junk? What an idiot! He knew the poison arrows were limited and would run out quickly. Suddenly, the girl turned and glared at Lin, clearly furious. How can you go back on your word? She shouted, pointing at him and calling him an opportunist. She stormed off, totally annoyed. Lin thought for a sec and figured he should try to make things right. Outside the newbie village in the boar forest, the group of girls was getting ready to level up. They split up, each aiming to take down 2 boars. Before long, the other 4 scattered in different directions, and Lin showed up out of nowhere. The girl spotted him and snapped, "What are you doing here?" Clearly, she was still pretty ticked off, but Lin didn't let that bother him. He just wanted to chat. She took a deep breath, calmed herself down, and let him talk. What Lin didn't know was that she was suspicious he might have just met Wang Jinghao and got played by the Millennium Guild. With that thought in mind, she put away her weapon, giving him another chance. Seeing her sheath her sword, Lin held up 5 fingers and told her for 500,000 she could get a top-secret tip. This info could give her guild a serious edge over the others. She didn't jump at the offer right away. Instead, she asked why he didn't just sell the intel to Wang Jinghao and reminded him he'd asked Wang Jinghao to look after him. Lin just waved it off. Does he really deserve it? I'm just playing along with him and dealing with his nonsense, he said, acting all pitiful. To Lin, the enemy of his enemy was his friend. And this girl seemed to dislike Wang Jinghao, so maybe they could team up later. She looked at him, clearly skeptical of his sudden change in attitude. He sent her his bank account details, assuring her it would be a fair trade and he wouldn't rip her off. She struggled with the decision for a bit, but in the end, she transferred the cash. Easiest million I've ever made, Lin thought to himself. Even though he knew real-world cash would eventually be useless, he still needed it now to better his life. Once the transfer was done, Lin told her to head back and finish the blacksmith shop quest. She was stunned for a sec, then got super mad and yelled at him, "You can't get a quest from the blacksmith shop!" She was about to attack Lin, thinking he was a scammer sent by Wang Jinghao. Lin quickly explained that she needed to help the blacksmith pump the bellows for 5 minutes after he started forging to get the quest. She didn't say anything, but still looked doubtful. "If you don't believe me, just have one of your friends try it out, but keep it on the down low so other players don't catch on. Otherwise, the info will lose its value," he advised quietly. Then he pulled out the SE letter, which the girl recognized immediately. He explained it was a quest reward and felt he'd said enough. What she did next was up to her as he turned to leave. She suddenly called out to him, still puzzled why he'd sell such important info to her. Lin flashed a grin and said, "I don't know, maybe because you're cute." She was caught off guard for a sec, then her cheeks turned pink and her look softened. Just then, there was a commotion behind them. They both turned around to see this huge boar charging out of the forest. "Is this a boss?" The girls yelled as they took off running. Instead of booking it, Lin stepped in front of them and calmly said, "You're in luck." "This is the biggest boss in the newbie village," one of the girls asked, surprised if he planned to take on the Boar King solo. Lin smiled, held out his hand, and asked if he could borrow her sword. She tossed it to him, still not totally convinced about his skills. Without saying much, he thanked her, grabbed the sword, and ignored the chatter behind him. Seriously? Is he just gonna get himself killed? One of the girls said, half annoyed and half embarrassed. Another one teased, "Yeah, he's probably just trying to impress Sister Wanling by playing the hero." Wanling told them to be quiet, but their laughter just got louder. Right then, Lin leaped to dodge the Boar King's charge, slashing at its belly and then its head. To his surprise, neither attack did any damage. Maybe I need a new strategy, he thought, quickly moving to the Boar King's rear. Instead of attacking, he sprinted in the opposite direction, watching from a safe distance. The girls chuckled at his desperate escape, commenting on how funny his running looked. Wanling sighed. "This is my fault for provoking him. At least he's a newbie, so dying a few times isn't a big deal. It's just a lesson." Lin soon reached a massive rock. As he got close to the edge, he did a 360-degree backflip, leaping over the Boar King. Unfortunately for the boar, it crashed headfirst into the rocks, breaking one of its thick tusks. A 50 popped up above its head as the fallen rocks caused extra damage. Lin watched calmly as the girls were stunned, not realizing such things were even possible. Despite the Boar King being dazed, Lin saw his chance and struck its forehead with another slash. Each hit dealt critical damage, though only about 8 points at a time. Gradually, the boss lost half of his health. Recovering from its daze, the Boar King roared furiously and charged again. Lin dodged and kept attacking relentlessly. The Boar King, driven mad by the pain, charged wildly. Lin used his same tactic of dodging and striking, leading the Boar King to crash into the rocks once more. Seizing the moment, he jumped onto its head and drove the iron sword down, piercing its skull completely. As the Boar King fell, a flicker of flame flew into Lin's body, giving him 70 experience points. "Breakthrough!" he shouted as he entered the early stage of chai refinement. His talent kicked in, doubling all his attributes, and a warm surge wiped away all fatigue. Entering the chai refinement stage officially marked Lin's path into cultivation, making him a real cultivator. His talent also gave him a new ability, the Blood Energy Seed, boosting his vitality by 10% with room for upgrades. This was a huge boost, significantly increasing his health. With his attributes doubled, a notification window popped up. "Congratulations on completing the first kill of the newbie village boss in 8 wastelands. A global announcement will be made. Would you like to hide your name?" Lin saw no reason to hide and chose not to. With his decision made, a global announcement echoed across the game, leaving everyone in shock. How could someone defeat the boss so fast? Many speculated he had to be a major player from a big guild. The girls saw the message pop up and got to know his name. While others were buzzing about the announcement, Lin was all about checking out the loot scattered on the ground. Thanks to his maxed out luck, he scored a bunch of gold coins, 2 weapons, and a movement technique book. Pretty sweet haul, right? But even with his excitement, he remembered the downside of his talent. With his recent breakthrough, his tribulation was about to hit. The system system let him know it'd be arriving in 30 minutes. With the sky getting darker and ominous clouds rolling in, Lin started feeling a bit uneasy. If he failed the tribulation, his attributes would take a permanent hit. Realizing how urgent this was, he rushed over to the sword sect, hoping someone there could give him a hand. Just as he was about to leave, the girl from earlier stopped him, asking if she could add him as a friend and offering to buy all his future gear. With no time to waste, Lin accepted her friend request and took off. She looked kinda annoyed, wondering why he was rushing off. Did he find them scarier than the Boar King? When he arrived at the sect, the dark clouds were still hanging around. Lin knew he couldn't tackle the tribulation alone, so he looked for someone strong who could help. Standing at the gate, he called out, "Disciple here, seeking a teacher." A bunch of NPCs, probably disciples of the sect, gathered around, noticing the sky darkening and the flashes of lightning. Suddenly, a brilliant light appeared, and a woman floated down from above. She asked what was going on, and everyone bowed to her. They quickly figured out it was a tribulation, and guessed it might be one of the Elder's direct disciples making a breakthrough. The Elders exchanged uncertain looks, and at that moment, Lin dashed forward, holding up his sword sect letter. A bolt of lightning struck nearby, catching the woman's attention. Lin asked for her help, knowing he wasn't ready to face the tribulation solo. With a graceful wave of her hand, she wrapped him in a radiant glow. The lightning hit, but the glow formed a protective barrier that totally blocked it. After that one strike, the dark clouds vanished and the sky cleared up. Taking a deep breath, Lin saw the Elders staring at him, totally shocked. It was their first time seeing a tribulation for someone at the early Chai refinement stage. They thought he was a prodigy. Their shock quickly turned into interest, and they rushed towards him, each one eager to take him as their disciple. One female elder even grabbed his arm. Watching them fight over him, Lin tried to stay calm despite his excitement. Just when things were getting heated, the girl who helped him spoke up. "No need to fight. This new disciple will be under my guidance," she declared. The crowd went silent. It was the sect leader herself speaking, and everyone knew she never took on disciples. Someone even murmured about it. The girl came over and asked if Lin wanted to be her sole disciple and train in the inner hall. A window popped up, showing that Lin had triggered the sect's greatest opportunity. Even though he was stunned, he accepted without hesitation and bowed deeply. It was amazing. He had just joined the sect and already found such a powerful master. They headed to the inner hall, the heart of the sect. His master told him to train there from now on and assigned another disciple to get him a newcomer's package and show him to his quarters. She left, reminding him to meet her in the main hall the next day. The girl seemed a bit aloof, but Lin was pumped about hitting his goal. After waiting for what felt like forever with no sign of the assigned disciple, he decided to explore on his own. He was curious about any hidden quests he might find. Suddenly, he stumbled upon a uniquely styled palace. He pushed open the door and stepped inside, only to be startled by a stern female voice asking, "Who's there?" It hit him that he had wandered into the girl's palace. He tried to apologize, but before he could finish, she hit him with a powerful blow that drained 90% of his health in an instant. She gave him a hard time for wandering into her place without permission. Panicking, Lin quickly explained that the assigned disciple hadn't shown up yet, and he was just trying to get the lay of the land when he accidentally walked in. Rubbing his swollen cheek, he silently hoped this wouldn't mess up her opinion of him. She sighed and decided not to punish him. Instead, she handed him a pill and firmly warned him never to come into her palace without asking first. Looking at the pill, Lin realized it was a high-grade one that boosted all combat stats by 30% for 5 minutes and restored 3,000 health. He figured he'd save it for later and went back to his spot. Soon, he heard footsteps approaching. It was the disciple his master had sent, a young girl in blue robes. "Junior brother, come and pay your respects to your senior," she said. Lin gave her a respectful bow and said, "Greetings, senior." She was pleasantly surprised by how he was playing along, and a system notification popped up saying Gongwei's rapport had increased by 10 points. Lin complimented her. "Senior, not only are you as beautiful as a flower, but your cultivation is impressive too." Hearing this, she got even happier, but blushed and turned her head shyly, trying to hide her face while calling him a smooth talker. "There's a saying that to advance in cultivation, you've got to practice hard and master the art of flattery," Lin added, making her laugh. Another system notification popped up, showing that her rapport had gone up by another 5 points. He hadn't expected her to be so easy to get along with. Building rapport with NPCs could open up various quests and opportunities. Usually reaching a rapport level of 61 or more allowed physical contact with NPCs of the opposite gender, and 71 or above could lead to deeper connections. But getting there wasn't easy. Many dedicated players had tried and failed in past lives. Suddenly, Lin started coughing up blood uncontrollably. Alarmed, Gongye asked when he had gotten such serious injuries. Remembering the earlier incident, Lin saw a chance to gain some sympathy and benefits. He wiped the blood from his mouth and told her the whole story. The girl realized her delay had made him wander off and get hurt by the sect leader. She almost started crying, saying that the sect leader had specifically told her to take care of him, but she had been too caught up in reading a novel. She quickly pulled out a bottle of pills and handed them to Lin, apologizing a lot and blaming herself. Lin shook his head and said it was his fault for wandering around without permission. Before he could say more, the girl looked at him with admiration, surprised that he was defending her even after getting hurt. Her rapport with him went up by another 5 points. After their chat, she generously gave him a green pendant. Lin took a good look at it. It was a spiritual level piece of gear with defense plus 10, vitality plus 5, and the ability to regenerate 1% of mana per second when out of combat. It also had a special skill, a 0.5c mana shield during combat. This jade pendant was top tier for spiritual level equipment. Laughing, she said, "Of course, course, as your senior, I've got plenty of good stuff. Then she got ready to show Lin to his quarters. He marveled at how quickly he had scored such treasures, but reminded himself to treat NPCs like they had real emotions and feelings, a little secret he was keeping for now. They soon arrived at a spirit gathering array, the perfect spot for meditation and cultivation, where spiritual energy turned into experience. Feeling the energy around them, she mentioned, a bit enviously, that even her father's place only had a mystic level array. Lin was totally blown away to find such a high-level setup in his new pad. Usually players just meditate offline or AFK here to grind experience, which is super slow. But this setup, it felt like his master had really gone all out for him. After chatting for a few more minutes, the girl patted him on the shoulder and said goodbye. Lin thanked her again and settled in to start his meditation. Sitting in the spirit gathering array, he could feel the spiritual energy pouring into him at an impressive 52 points per hour. Thanks to his maxed out perception, this was dozens of times faster than your average early stage chai refinement cultivator. He figured he'd be leveling up in no time, so he decided to log off and catch up with his master tomorrow. Back in the real world, Lin checked his phone and saw his account balance had crossed over 1 million, just the beginning. He called Ren Lan, and it wasn't long before she rolled up on her motorcycle, following the address he'd sent her. When she took off her helmet, it was clear her workouts had paid off. She looked amazing. As she came upstairs, Lin was already at the door. She was a bit puzzled about why he'd called her so early, since she had planned a morning run. "Actually, I just wanted you to see my new place," he said. She walked in, taking a look around, and casually remarked, "Wow, not bad." She was impressed, especially when Lin mentioned the rent was $6,000 a month. She joked, "You really know how to live it up, huh? Is my membership fee just going down the drain?" He grinned and teased back, "What else could I do? I couldn't pay you back anyway, so I might as well spend it quickly so you stop thinking about your money." She leaped over the sofa in one smooth move and grabbed him by the collar, sitting on top of him. It looked like she was ready to turn him into a punching bag. Lin was totally caught off guard and tried to explain, but she wasn't letting up. He had to keep struggling and it was getting awkward. How do I put this? "My mushroom kinda grew," he said. She seemed to catch on and stopped mid-swing, her face turning red. She jumped up and they both looked down, the vibe getting a bit awkward. "Lin, how dare you take advantage of me?" she yelled, raising her fist again. Just then, there was a knock at the door. "Looks like my game pods have arrived," Lin said, asking them to hold on for a sec while he rubbed his sore cheeks. He explained that he'd earned some money in the game and bought Renlan a game pod, asking her to get off him. The delivery folks wheeled in the 2 game pods, and Renlan realized their value. She understood they could make up for the money she'd given him before. Lin knew her college dorm wouldn't have space for them, and leaving them at her place might tick off her dad enough to destroy them. So he set them up here and even prepped a room for her. Renlan wasn't mad anymore. This was the latest model of the game pod, and she was excited to snap photos and share them on Instagram. Lin shook his head, thinking, money really does solve 99% of problems. Back in the game, it was already evening when his master showed up at the spirit gathering array, praising his talent as the best she'd ever seen. After just a few hours, she had to leave. Lin played dumb about why his cultivation had suddenly hit a wall. He knew that breaking through each minor stage needed special elixirs, and hoped his master might have some. Her expression softened a bit, maybe because he'd intruded into the palace yesterday and almost caught her naked. She pulled out a purple pill, explaining it was a chai gathering pill used as an offering that could help him break through. Lin gave her a big thanks, knowing those pills were top-tier stuff you usually only get from the best spots. Just as he thought she was about to hand it over, she crushed it instead. "Even though you've got mad talent, I'm worried you'll end up being someone who only knows how to meditate and not actually fight," she said. "A true master needs not just cultivation and power, but real battle experience too." Lin suddenly had an aha moment, thinking back to his past life. He knew you could boost cultivation with pills and rare items, and equipment could up your stats, but battle skills? There's no shortcut for that. He nodded and shared his thoughts. A plant in a greenhouse can't climb the path of immortality. Only a tree that's weathered by thunderstorms can reach eternal life. Feiyan seemed pretty pleased with that, and a message popped up saying her rapport with Lin had gone up by 5 points. He didn't expect that sharing his wisdom would boost his standing with the sect leader, but it was a solid start. Who knows what else might come from it? Lin pushed aside any distracting thoughts. He was laser focused on becoming the world's greatest sword cultivator. Romance? Nah, that would just slow down his sword skills. Feiyan handed him another pill and told him to pick a tough chai refinement quest from the outer hall. If he completed it, he'd get the spirit gathering pill she just gave him. She also gave him the sect's core cultivation technique, the Tianyin Heart Sutra, which all Tianyin sword disciples needed to master. This was a major perk of being under the sect leader's direct guidance. Lin didn't waste any time and rushed to the outer hall. A bunch of players were already there, which wasn't surprising. Dedicated players often stumbled upon the blacksmith's hidden quests. Suddenly, a female voice called out, "Hey, big shot!" It was Wanling. Lin hadn't expected her to join the sword sect too, but he was cool with having a friend around. What a coincidence. "You joined the sword sect as well?" Lin asked with a grin. "I prefer using swords, so naturally I chose the sword sect," Wanling replied. They chatted for a bit, but Lin had to excuse himself, saying he had a quest to handle. Wanling seemed keen to keep talking, but Lin had to hurry. One of Wanling's friends teased her, saying, "Sister Wanling, even your charm can't sway him. Winning him over is gonna be a challenge." Wanling blushed and started to argue back. By then, Lin had reached the quest board. The line was long, so he took the chance to start reading the Tianyin Heart Sutra. When it was his turn, he told the supervisor he wanted to take on a quest. She suggested he pick one that matched his level. Lin checked out out the difficulty levels. The easy ones at the bottom involved gathering money and herbs, which seemed like a waste of time. The mid-level ones were about hunting low-level monsters, but those didn't seem challenging enough either. At the top, a golden plaque caught his eye, a Hell Lev quest. Without hesitation, he picked it. Lin knew Hell Lev quests were always special and offered rich rewards. With the Tianyin Heart Sutra boosting his combat attributes by 5%, he felt ready to tackle the quest. Plus, he was familiar with the destination. His mission was pretty clear: get revenge for the fallen disciple and track down the lost technique. The supervisor gave me a heads up, saying this quest was seriously tough and hinted I might want to rethink it. She warned that the bad guy could be at the late stage of chi refinement, way stronger than me, and failing would block me from picking up new quests. He gave her a reassuring smile but stuck to his guns, even though some players were laughing at me, doubting the enemy's strength and the lack of clues. He took the quest and headed to the city gate. By evening, he rolled up to Chufeng City and found the inn. This was the key spot for his quest. As soon as the locals saw him, they recognized him as a member of a big-name sect. Pretty soon, a bunch of women came out of the inn to greet him. He was kind of surprised to see the place packed. Right in the middle, a guy was holding court, sharing the latest news and cracking jokes. He mentioned some juicy gossip. The head of the Xuanwu Temple had just hit a major breakthrough, and 2 other sects were getting hitched through marriage. He wasn't shocked by how up-to-date this guy was. He's the top info broker in the 8 wildernesses. Nothing slipped past him, and he's here every day making tips. He ordered a cup of hot tea and tuned in, hoping to catch some leads for his quest. After a bit, the guy on stage started talking about a disciple from the Tianyin sword sect named Zhang Hai, who'd been killed during his training. The killer was Zhou Hao, a rogue cultivator from the late stage of chi refinement, known for being ruthless and into the demonic path. The guy wrapped up his act and left, so we followed him outside and flagged him down, ready to buy some intel. Unlike the newbie players who just wander around, he knew paying for info was the quickest way to get the dirt he needed. The guy turned around with a grin, saying as long as he had the cash, he'd spill the beans. He handed over a bag of spirit stones and asked where Zhou Hao was. He let me know Zhou Hao, known for his lecherous ways, often hung out in the red light district of Chuang City. Just as he was about to leave, the guy held up 5 fingers, saying he had another crucial piece of info, but it had cost 5 more spirit stones. He didn't hesitate, tossing him another bag. Seeing him and noting his looks, he warned Lin that while Zhou Hao was just a rogue cultivator at the late stage of chi refinement, his brother, Zhou Shen, was a foundation establishment cultivator. He advised Lin to be super careful. He thanked him and headed to his next stop, Ottoman Pavilion, the most notorious red light district in the city. Inside, it was all people wrapped around each other, laughing and chatting. He even heard someone say, "Finish this drink and then we can head to the room." Just then, a guy stumbled out and the girls waved him off, saying, "Master Zhou, come again next time." He turned around, cheeks flushed and clearly drunk, laughing and promising to visit each of them again. He ducked behind a pillar, waiting for him to leave. Once he was on his own, he started following him quietly. We left Chufeng City and wandered into the forest outskirts. It was late at night, and Zhou Hao was stumbling around, but soon he heard his footsteps and spun around, wary, shouting, "Who's there?" He stepped out and said, "Just someone who wants your life." He sobered up a bit and pulled out a weapon. Seeing that he was only at the early stage of chi refinement, until he noticed his outfit and realized he was from the Tianyin sword sect, guess he figured he was here for revenge. Zhou Hao made the first move, charging straight at Lin, but Lin dodged effortlessly, totally catching Zhou Hao off guard. Zhou Hao quickly spun around and swung his weapon with some serious force, trying to catch Lin off balance. Lin drew his sword and countered with a clang that echoed through the air. Zhou Hao was pushed back, clearly stunned by Lin's strength. Lin just shrugged and said, "It's not that I'm too strong, it's that you're too weak." What Zhou Hao didn't know was that Lin's insane natural talent gave him full basic stats, and he had just learned the Tianyin Heart Sutra, making him way stronger than anyone at his level. This time, Zhou Hao channeled his energy, making his weapon crackle with lightning, and launched his Frenzy Blade technique. A powerful attack surged toward Lin, but he stayed chill. It was the perfect time to test out the jade pendant his senior had given him. Just as the blade was about to hit, a shield popped up and blocked the attack. This spirit shield skill is definitely the real deal, Lin thought. Zhou Hao was panting heavily after that attack. Despite this, Zhou Hao still demanded Lin hand over his stuff, promising to spare him if he complied. Lin laughed out loud. "Seriously? Who gave you the guts to ask that? What a joke." This ticked Zhou Hao off and he attacked again, swinging faster and more frantically, but Lin dodged every swing with ease. Zhou Hao's eyes were wide with disbelief. "How is this even possible?" he muttered. Realizing he was in over his head and could end up dead, Zhou Hao tried to back away. Lin saw his chance, lunged forward, and slashed at Zhou Hao's shoulder, dealing some serious damage. Blood started pouring from the wound, and Zhou Hao looked at Lin in shock. Lin got a look at Zhou Hao's stats and thought, he's not as tough as he looks. He ramped up his attacks and quickly dropped Zhou Hao's health by 70%. Even though Zhou Hao was at the late stage of chi refinement, his stats were no match for Lin's superior skills. Lin landed a critical hit, knocking Zhou Hao to the ground. Pointing his sword at Zhou Hao, Lin demanded the secret technique. Zhou Hao, terrified, began begging for mercy. Suddenly, Lin sensed a new danger and dodged a powerful attack that sliced through the ground, creating a shockwave. A figure emerged from the forest. Zhou Hao's brother, Zhou Shen. Zhou Hao yelled, "Brother, save me!" Lin frowned as he looked at the newcomer. Zhou Shen walked over to his brother, scolding him. "I told you to stay in the mountains and lay low with things so tense, but you wouldn't listen. listen. Zhou Hao started apologizing, urging Zhou Shen to deal with Lin first. Zhou Shen looked at Lin with disdain and said, "If you hand over all your belongings, I'll make your death quick and painless." Lin didn't even bother to respond. They were just clowns to him. Zhou Hao was about to grab a container of pills to recover and help his brother fight back, but before he could, Lin dashed forward and drove his sword into Zhou Hao's neck. A damage number popped up. Critical hit, 300. As Lin pulled the sword out, Zhou Hao screamed in agony and fell to the ground, spilling the pills. Zhou Shen glared at Lin, furious. Lin stayed calm and said, "Seems like your brother didn't get the memo that villains often meet their end because they talk too much. Either way, his goal was to take both of you down sooner or later, and now it's your turn." So, Lin was totally caught off guard by how strong his opponent was. In the blink of an eye, Zhou Shen's blade slashed across him, and Lin took the hit full on, racking up 220 damage. Not great news. Zhou Shen was way tougher than he'd thought. The blow sent Lin flying back a few meters, but he managed to sneak a peek at Zhou Shen's stats. Dude had 5,300 health, and his overall stats were like 3 times better than Zhou Shen's. Before Lin could even react, Zhou Shen suddenly vanished and popped up behind him. Lin spun around just in time to block Zhou Shen's attack with his sword. The force pushed him back again, but he didn't take any damage this time. Lin steadied himself, realizing that even though Zhou Shen was faster, his own experience and muscle memory helped him anticipate Zhou Shen's moves and defend. It was a close call, though. Zhou Shen seemed surprised, probably a bit embarrassed that a Foundation establishment cultivator like him couldn't easily take down a chai refinement newbie. Zhou Shen's speed cranked up a notch, and he unleashed a skill, the soul-splitting slash, dealing 300 damage to Lin. Lin regretted using his spirit shield earlier since it had a 15-minute cooldown. Luckily, he had recently snagged a movement technique from a newbie village boss called Phantom Step, which had a 10-second cooldown. It let him create some distance. Zhou Shen smirked and activated his own movement skill, Shadow Clone Step. Suddenly, there were 3 Zhou Shens attacking Lin from different angles. Lin kept his cool. Dealing with this kind of trick was straightforward if you could spot the real one. The middle Zhou Shen had a gleam in his eyes while the other 2 looked lifeless. Lin lunged forward and nailed the middle one with a critical hit, causing 55 damage and triggering an armor break effect that lasted 5 seconds. With Zhou Shen's defense down, Lin seized the chance, thrusting his sword again for 110 damage. Zhou Shen roared in anger, unleashing a burst of energy that pushed Lin back. Zhou Shen took advantage of this, using another skill to charge at Lin with overwhelming speed. Even though each hit only dealt double-digit damage, Lin started to struggle. It was rough going up against a Foundation establishment cultivator at the early stage of chi refinement. If Lin were at the mid-stage, things would be a lot different. His health had already dropped by a third, so he had no choice but to pull out the purple jade pill his master had given him. Other players might not face severe penalties upon death during the newbie phase, but if Lin died, his innate talent would drop by 10%. He quickly swallowed the pill, and a purple aura surrounded him. Zhou Shen hesitated, clearly surprised. After taking the pill, Lin's combat attributes jumped by 30 points for the next 5 minutes. Zhou Shen might have noticed the change, but he still didn't see Lin as a threat. When Zhou Shen swung his blade again, Lin didn't even bother dodging. The pill had not only restored his health, but also boosted his defense. Zhou Shen's attack was blocked without Lin even flinching. Realizing the pill was extraordinary, Zhou Shen's eyes gleamed with greed, thinking Lin must have more valuable stuff. Before Zhou Shen could fully process what was happening, Lin slashed him for 180 damage. Lin grinned and said, "So I just need to take you down before the pill's effects wear off, right?" Zhou Shen was totally caught off guard by how strong Lin had become from a single pill. Realizing he couldn't win a direct fight, Zhou Shen started retreating, trying to stall until the pill's effects wore off, so Zhou Shen's speed wasn't cutting it anymore. He kept getting hit, and the system gave Lin a shout-out, saying he'd mastered some swordsmanship skills and boosted his sword skill aptitude by 5%. That was awesome. It felt like Lin was really getting the hang of swordsmanship. After a few more hits, Zhou Shen's health tanked to below 15%. Lin could see the fear in Zhou Shen's eyes. What Zhou Shen didn't know was that he'd pegged Lin as a big deal, thinking letting him go would be a major mistake. Out of nowhere, Zhou Shen's weapon turned all funky, wrapped in purple energy, and his aura shifted dramatically with his eyes turning blood red. He launched a crazy powerful strike at Lin. Sensing something sketchy was coming, Lin anticipated the move and used Phantom Step to dodge. Zhou Shen was shocked to see Lin pop up right in front of him. As Zhou Shen struggled to recover from his swing, Lin took the chance and went for a quick throat slash. His sword sliced right across Zhou Shen's throat, dealing 466 damage and wiping out his remaining health. Zhou Shen was left stunned, muttering, "Can this be?" before collapsing hard to the ground. Lin let out a big sigh of relief. It was finally over. The system gave him the green light that he'd completed the Hell difficulty quest and could head back to the sect for his reward. With some time to spare, Lin started checking out the loot dropped by the 2 brothers. But before he headed back, there was still one more thing he needed to take care of. In the morning, Lin arrived at Fengku City Market. He decided to buy a gift for his master since it was his first time doing a mission outside the sect. As the saying goes, it's the thought that counts, and buying a gift might show respect to his master in this traditional world. He thought giving a gift could make his master like him more. He wondered what kind of gift to get her and decided to buy a jade hairpin because, as they say, a woman can never have too many accessories. After buying the gift, he returned to the sect to turn in his mission. The attendant was shocked that he finished a super tough mission so fast. Not just her, everyone there was surprised to see he completed such a hard mission despite his low level. The lady took the scroll from him and was impressed. She said he's truly an elite from the inner halls and has a bright future ahead. She wished him good luck and gave him his mission rewards, which included 100 lower-grade spiritual stones and an extra reward. She told him to keep them safe. He thanked her and put everything in his storage pouch. Others around were amazed that he got low-grade spiritual stones, as they'd never seen such a big reward even after many missions. They were also impressed by the sect's merit points on his wooden plaque. Seeing he was a big deal, they crowded around him, trying to recruit him into their guilds. Even a shy-looking girl begged him to help her level up, saying she'd do anything in return. But Lin wasn't interested and ran off to avoid trouble. They couldn't follow him because he entered the inner hall, which is only for inner disciples and off-limits to outer disciples. He went to meet his master. She already heard he completed a super tough mission, even though she only asked him to pick a hard one. She asked why he chose the super tough mission. She said if he had failed, he could have been defeated, and the sword sect would have lost its genius, which would be a big loss for the whole sect. Lin apologized for his mistake, but she told him to forget about it. She asked about the cultivation level of the opponent he faced in the mission. He said he thought the opponent was only in the chi refining realm, but he didn't expect the opponent to have a brother who was a foundation establishment cultivator. She was surprised he managed to defeat a foundation establishment cultivator with his skills. Lin said he only succeeded because he used the elixir she gave him, and without it, he definitely wouldn't have won. The sect leader was happy with his achievement, but told him the gap between cultivation levels is huge, so he needs to be more careful and not act recklessly since he's the most talented disciple in the sect. She gave him a talisman to use only in a life or death situation. As she handed it over, she thought to herself that she didn't expect Lin's fighting skills to be so amazing and that he's truly a rare talent. The soul talisman has a piece of his master's soul sealed inside and can only be used once. It also can't be used in battles between players. Seeing it wasn't an ordinary talisman, he thanked her and happily took it. He said to himself excitedly that with the sect leader's support, he'd feel confident doing anything. She gave him the high-quality chai condensing pill she promised, and since he completed a super tough mission, she gave him an extra pill to help him break through successfully. Lin thanked her, promising not to let her down. She told him he could exchange for a sword technique at the scripture library since that's what he needs most right now. As she was about to leave, he pulled out the hairpin he bought for her. He said he wanted to get her a gift, but could only afford a simple one, not a jeweled one, and hoped she'd like it. She didn't say anything about the hairpin and left, telling him to train hard and not slack off. He replied, "Don't worry, master." He sighed as she left because she seemed so cold, and he wasn't sure if she liked the hairpin. To his surprise, he got a notification that his master's favorability toward him increased by 5, reaching a total of 10, which is the familiar level. He was thrilled that her favorability finally went up. Suddenly, he heard a loud noise outside and didn't know what it was. The sound came from the arena, caused by Elder Tianqing. Tianqing was upset for failing again. He wondered why the Eternal Youth Pill is harder to make than the Celestial Essence Pill. He didn't believe it was true, so he told the crowd he's Tianqing, one of the 12 great elders in the sword sect, and he's working on an elixir. He asked if anyone would help him find a medicinal catalyst right away. As he said that, everyone got a notification about the mission. It was a super tough mission to help Elder Tianqing find a yin replenishing herb, a key ingredient for the Eternal Youth Pill. The herb is hard to get because it grows on a medicinal spirit falcon. They also got a hint that the falcon is in Kangang Medicine Valley. Everyone refused the mission because it was too hard and required spending money, which they thought wasn't worth it since money is hard to come by and the mission had a high chance of failure. Suddenly, Lin showed up. He greeted the elder and said he'd help find the yin replenishing herb. The elder was surprised someone took the mission. He thought to himself that this must be that cold girl's direct disciple. At the same time, Lin thought to himself that the old man is the greatest alchemy grandmaster in the sword sect, and it'd be great to build a good relationship with him. That night, Lin reached Kangang Medicine Valley. He walked through the valley with a lantern, thinking to himself that based on his past experience, a boss-level creature like the medicinal spirit falcon usually appears where herbs grow well. He was in such a place now. After searching for a few minutes, he found the spot, but someone was already there. From their fighting style, it looked like a guild. The guild was battling the falcon. Its health was almost at half, but they were no match for it. Lin smiled and called them beginners since there were so many of them, yet they couldn't catch one falcon. From the looks of it, they'd probably lose to the falcon. He decided to negotiate with them to let him have the boss. The people fighting were Wanling and her guild members, and they were surprised to see Lin in the valley. Lin was happy to see them since they knew each other, so his request might be easier to make. He approached them and said he urgently needed the falcon for a mission, asking if they could let him have it. At the same time, their guild leader approached and asked Wanling if she knew Lin. Wanling said he's the expert they told her about before, the one who defeated the beginner village's boar king by himself and got announced to the whole server. She added that they bought information about the sect mission from the blacksmith from him. The guild leader thought Lin was probably at the valley to capture the boss and get the Tianan Heart Sutra. She told Wanling the boss is important to their Moon Shadow guild, so they couldn't give it to him even though they're friends. Wanling said okay and went to tell Lin. She apologized for not being able to help, saying her boss needed the falcon for a mission. She asked if he could wait for it to respawn tomorrow. Lin sighed and said he expected they wouldn't give it up easily, but looking at their fight, he probably wouldn't need to wait for it to respawn. Just then, the Falcon went wild and used a skill. The skill made some players dizzy, and the Falcon launched a strong attack that defeated them in one hit. Lin told them he was about to warn them that when the Falcon's health drops to about 50%, it releases stunning pollen. The pollen lowers their physical energy and increases their skill cooldown. He wished them good luck fighting the Falcon. Though the information was new, the guild leader told Wanling to ignore Lin and focus on delaying the boss. They used the Earth Immortal Binding Hand technique to pin it down. The guild leader used Blazing Fire Lantern, but it only reduced the Falcon's health a little. Lin, watching their fight, was disappointed because those flashy moves would only make the Falcon angrier. Once the Falcon's wrath value got high enough, its attack speed and damage would increase a lot. His guess was right. The Falcon got furious and charged at the guild leader, using its beak to strike her chest. The damage almost depleted her health, but she used her last strength to activate Stone Rain technique to counterattack. Lin shouted, asking if she was foolish. He said he could teach her how to handle the Falcon, but she had to give him the yin replenishing herb it drops. Without thinking much, they agreed. Lin said to the guild leader that the Falcon hates her the most, yet she's using Stone Rain to make it even angrier. Her health was almost gone, and once the Falcon recovered from Stone Rain, it would defeat a fragile mage cultivator like her in one strike. He went behind her, grabbed her hand to show her how to use Stone Rain, and said she should combine it with Earth Immortal Binding Hands to do the most damage. Since her Earth Immortal Binding Hands cooldown was over, he told her to use it first. She followed his instructions. He added that she should always control the opponent from a distance and let her teammates deal damage. Seeing his strategy was working, she thanked him for his help. But suddenly the Crimson Guild showed up. A guy from the guild said fiercely that they were already clearing the area, so they should stop and leave because they wanted the boss. And that's a wrap for today's video. If you enjoyed the content, hit that like button for more juicy updates and don't forget to smash that subscribe button for regular updates.